Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I want to take some time today to talk about this news that we got over the weekend. I know it's a couple days late at this point, but I've had a bit of a busy couple days, but finally have time to sit down and really talk about this. The news that broke over the weekend is that the Overwatch World Cup will return in 2023. Now, a couple weeks ago I put out a video where I made 11 hypothetical World Cup rosters for a hypothetical Overwatch World Cup. So I'll link to that in the description and in the cards and at the end of this video if you want to check it out. I had no idea this was in the works when that video was made. Very pleasant surprise for me, so really nice to see this World Cup announcement. Let's just talk about it a bit, talk about some of the details in here, and kind of give you my thoughts, opinions, whatever. There are a couple things in here that I think are very interesting in terms of the timeline for it and whatnot, so let's just jump in and talk about it. They open up saying, "Attention world, after 3 years away, we're thrilled to announce that the Overwatch World Cup is returning for 2023, and the competition will be bigger than ever. New game, new players, and new ways of spotlighting your country and region on a global scale. We'll reveal additional program details as they're ready, but here's the big picture for the 2023 Overwatch World Cup. In January, we'll announce the 36 countries and regions competing in the 2023 Overwatch World Cup, and that's also when competition committee applications will open. Each competition committee will be responsible for organizing tryouts for their country and region, following Blizzard guidelines." So, community committee is like head coach, general manager, social media manager. It's like, or community manager. I think it's head coach, community manager, and general manager. So those are the three things. I know, like, the U.S., when they won in 2019, they had Ballin as their general manager, Arrow as their head coach. I don't remember off the top of my head who the social media manager was, but I know, like, Stylosa was the general manager, I think, for Team UK that year. So there's a lot of different, like, things that go in with the competition committee. Alongside regular tryouts, we're introducing a new avenue for players to compete for a spot on their team. This comes in the form of an open tournament format, World Cup Trials. In February, the World Cup Trials competition will earn winning players a direct spot in the trials for their team. Players will still be able to sign up for regular tryouts taking place in March. Regular tryouts have a competitive rank requirement of Diamond and above, so aspiring players should start climbing the ladder now. I don't know if that also applies to the World Cup Trials or not. But I guess we'll see what happens there. But definitely for the regular tryouts in March, you will need to be Diamond or above. This, I'm going to assume you don't have to be Diamond, but you probably won't make it if you aren't. So, you know, that's another thing. Also in 2023, we'll be offering some challenges and rewards for all players to help celebrate the return of the Overwatch World Cup. So in-game cosmetics, most likely, which is cool. I'm hoping that means that we'll get more flags for some of the countries that aren't represented. I don't think Saudi Arabia has a flag in the game, so that's a country that I think would be one of the better teams in the World Cup. They are a very top-level country right now in terms of their talent, so I think they would do pretty well. So that's a country that doesn't have a flag. So that's an example of something, but we'll see as time goes on. And then they say here, in June, after team rosters are finalized, Overwatch World Cup qualifiers are planned to take place through regional online competition, narrowing down 36 teams to 16 for the next phase of the tournament. Those 16 teams will then battle out in a LAN environment in the fall of 2023 to determine our first World Cup champion since 2019. So, 36 is an interesting number. 36 down to 16. Because depending on how many regions there are, that, you know, the difference in the amount of players you can get, you have 16 moving on. So 20 of the 36 won't move on. So if they have 4 regions, which is a decent number, you'd have 9 teams in each region, or 9 teams in each qualifier, whatever it is, however they make it work. That is mostly how it's going to be. I don't think it'll be LAN tournaments in the qualifiers. I only imagine the group stage and finals is a LAN, and that's based on what I'm seeing here. But as you can see here, there's a kind of nice timeline here that puts it all together. So January, we'll get the announcement for the 36 countries and regions competing. Like I said, my guess is 4 regions, 9 teams each, give or take a couple. There might be some regions that have fewer teams, and so they have fewer teams that qualify, but we'll see. That's also when the committee applications open up. So if you're someone who's interested in that, there you go. You have World Cup trials in February, so that's going to be your open tournament to earn a guaranteed spot in the tryouts. What's interesting to me is that it's country and regional team tryouts. So I'm curious to see what that entails. If there's going to be a couple of countries that they group together for one reason or another. I'm sure they've had discussions with some of the previous committee members and previous competitive leaders and also just other World Cup people. There is a very real possibility they're going to try to increase what you have. And I think some of that comes down to the fact that some of the regions just aren't very... some of the countries aren't as good right now, and especially you look at areas like South America, Africa, where there's just not any real solid foundation for an Overwatch tournament. And so it'd be interesting to see if there is a push to kind of combine some of these countries into regions to kind of create a more competitive environment where you don't normally have players that do very, very well. That'll be interesting to see. They specifically say country and regional. And I know there was something from Logix where he talked about them doing Benelux, which is Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, as one team, because I think if you're Logix, you want to do that because Belgium hasn't been very good historically. And that basically means that you can put him onto a Netherlands team. But I don't know if that'll happen. So that's what I'm interested in kind of seeing what this means from here, is what that entails. Do we get, wider region teams for some countries that just don't have a certain amount of competitors, or do we get only countries and maybe the regional is just something else? Who knows how it'll work. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that's one of those things that could be good for, like I said, a region like South America that just doesn't have a contender scene right now. There's not a ton of spotlight on that scene, so that could benefit some of the players where you kind of get to build a very large South American team. Maybe not with Brazil, because Brazil speaks Portuguese. Maybe you do, maybe you combine them in, but Brazil might have the talent pool. Brazil is obviously a big country. A lot of people live there. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there, but that's one of the things I'm looking at and I see, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how they're going to do that. Then you get to the team tryouts in March with the team selection during that, and then you have the World Cup qualifiers in June, where they actually say it's 6 regional qualifiers. So that means, interestingly enough, that is 6 qualifiers with 6 teams in each. And then I guess depending on the region, more or less teams will move on, because obviously if just the top 2 were to move on, you'd have 12 teams. If the top 3 teams were to move on, it would be 18 teams. So I'm curious to kind of see how they do that. If you have 16 teams in the group stage after the qualifiers, you have 6 regions. My guess is, and it's just a guess, they will likely have something in place where it's either some regions just get more teams to move on because of the just number of teams there are, or there will be some type of pre-World Cup elimination bracket. But I imagine it's just going to be different regions are going to have more representatives. I could see Europe having multiple, I could see it being top 2 from North America, top 2 from South America, top 2 from Oceania, top 2 from Asia. And then you kind of move into what do you do with Europe, what do you do with Africa, and then you kind of have multiple teams. So obviously we'll see details for that. I'm curious to see how they break that up. And then in fall 2023, we get to the actual World Cup proper. Top 16 country and regional teams competing in a LAN round-robin group stage. Top 8 teams advance. And then you have the finals, which is the top 8 country and regional teams compete in a single elimination bracket to determine the Overwatch World Cup medalist and world champion. That will likely be at BlizzCon in 2023. It's usually when it would happen in the past, so I would imagine that is going to be what we have again. And then they close out here saying whether you're a pro, aspiring pro, or casual player, there's a ton of ways to get involved. Stay tuned for further announcements, including details about each stage of the World Cup, the viewer information, and much more. I think the interesting thing really is the thing I was just talking about in terms of like how the actual qualifications are going to work, how they're going to determine what teams, what they mean by country and regional teams. Those are all things I'm looking at and I'm all very interested in. I'm also very interested in seeing how this will impact the Overwatch League season because presumably if this is going on in February, March, and June, this will be right in the middle of the Overwatch League season. Now, depending on when the season starts, they could take some time off during June. That could be like a mid-season break where they let players go and do World Cup qualifiers. The other thing is that possibly competing in the Overwatch League means you can't compete in the World Cup, which would also be a very interesting thing to look at because there is a lot of talent, of course, that is not in the Overwatch League from countries like Korea and the U.S., which have been kind of the only, well, they've been the only 2 countries that have won the World Cup so far. There's lots of talent outside of the Overwatch League that it would be cool to kind of see on a global stage on a LAN environment in a really big tournament kind of representing their country. I'm just interested to see kind of based on the timing of this schedule, how it overlaps with the Overwatch League. Because the reality is, assuming that the Overwatch League ends around what it did this year, if not a little bit earlier, though who knows, maybe they have, assuming this is when things are ending, I would, the season kind of started late this year, so I would see them probably trying to start the season a little bit earlier, though with the situation with the APAC region, who knows, but there's a possibility that June is kind of the mid-season tournament, middle of the season type of moment, and so teams will take a break and they will let kind of these World Cup qualifiers happen probably over the course of like a weekend or 2 weekends, whatever, middle of the season, take a break, let that happen. So teams kind of go through their World Cup qualifiers. Yes, it takes away scrim time that you would have had otherwise, which is why I think this is a very interesting schedule. And we'll see what happens. Some players might just opt to not get in to the World Cup. We've seen that a lot with especially South Korea. South Korea has a history of kind of having players that you would think would be on the World Cup roster just opting not to because they would rather just focus on taking a break rather than competing in the Overwatch World Cup. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's the thing I'm really interested in kind of seeing is how the overlap between the World Cup qualifying and the actual Overwatch League itself will happen. Seeing what these different countries and regional teams are. And then, of course, how they do everything. But we'll figure more about that in January. And, of course, throughout 2023, we'll get a lot more. But January in particular, we'll have a video that actually breaks down the actual 36 countries and regions. And that'll be nice to see. So leave in the comments down below your predictions for some of the countries. I might do a video where I try to guess what they might do. We'll see. Or I'll just do a reaction video when they announce everything. And I won't look. And I'll just do an immediate kind of initial reaction to the 36 countries and regions. The fact that they break them down makes me think that they are going to be combining certain areas, probably to try to provide a little bit more competitive kind of equality to make some of these teams that you maybe wouldn't, like an example with South America, right? You could put some of your countries that have a shared history together, so stuff like Colombia, Bolivia, Ecuador, like those are countries that have kind of a shared history to at least some degree. But those are like examples of countries that have pretty like strong ties in their past. Like those could be potentially what they mean by regions, or it's something else. I'm really interested in that. So let me know some of the teams you think will be down in the comments down below. I'm almost positive we'll get the U.S., South Korea, Canada, China. If you saw my last video, I'm sure all 11 of those countries that I talked about will have a spot in that initial 36. Australia will probably have a spot. New Zealand will probably have a spot. Those two could be combined, but I think that they'll probably be separated because they do have a decent scene in Contenders Australia. I'm interested to see what they do with Chinese Taipei. That has been one of the countries that has had its own team in the past, but maybe they kind of start combining that with China. Maybe they do Chinese Taipei with Hong Kong or Macau. Maybe that's what they mean by regions, like putting those two together or those three together to try to create like I don't know, greater China team, non-mainland. Who knows? There's a lot of different potential options there that you could kind of try to figure out there. Who knows if China will even be able to play in the World Cup? So that's a problem for its own time to figure out. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this World Cup. Countries that are going to be in it. Do you think it's going to be only players that are not in the Overwatch League? Whatever it is, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. I'm super excited for the World Cup to return. I love the World Cup. I've been a big World Cup fan since 2017, so I am all in on this, and I'm super excited. So that's it for me for today. However, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. I'm struggling to talk today because I have something on my tongue, so it's not a good time. So we're going to end it here. Thank you all once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.